Hi viewers, welcome back. In this highlight segment, we like to highlight someone that we think is doing something that is very, very credible here in the US and as well as in Nigeria. I'll be talking with Nmadili Okwumabua. She's actually an African architecture historian and also an urban planner. She's also the founder of Southern Sahara, a design consultancy service specializing in the research and development of modern African architecture. Nmadili, welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So let's just start from what you're doing right now. You are actually into African architecture, and you believe that Africans have their own architectural style, and we don't have to rely on the European system that we learn at school, and all that. So can you just start by talking about that? You've been advocating for African architecture, so tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. All right. Well, yes, you are correct. I'm an African architecture historian. I've always been interested in architecture and anything about the built environment. And coming from Nigeria, I'm actually half Nigerian, half American, born here but raised in both places. I've always been amazed at the different styles of design and building that people have. And, architecture is the marriage of art and construction, but it's based in the culture of a people. So growing up in Nigeria, I noticed, okay, wow, this is what we're doing here. These are the colors, these are the materials, these are the buildings. This is what we're building. And then I came to America and I found something new. And I said, wow, I wonder what makes architecture different. What makes architecture unique according to a people. And so that kind of got me into doing my own personal research once I got into a school of architecture here in the US.
I see. So, but if can you talk briefly about those things that makes African architecture unique and different from that of American architecture?
Okay, well, first of all, like I said, architecture is a result of a culture of the people that are building it, that are designing it. So, for example, let's say in America, how do we live? You have the nuclear family, which is a husband and wife, two children. What kind of a space do you design for such a nuclear family? You don't have a lot of extended people living with you, your grandparents, grandchildren, cousins, and uncles, and all of that. So you can see that a house can be based around just a mom, a dad, and children. How do they lay out the space? You have a master bedroom that is just for mom and dad. The daughters, maybe the kids can share a room or they have the separate rooms. So you have limited bedrooms, kitchen, we like to open plan here because when mom is cooking here, she's part of the conversation. So the kitchen is open to the living room. Everyone can share in family time and family space. So you have a nuclear design. But we talk about another culture, let's say in Africa, in Nigeria, where you have much larger families. So starting with the master bedroom, we think about that here where it belongs to the husband and wife, but in Nigeria, a lot of times you're finding that the master bedroom is actually for the man, and the madam has her own room, and they're connected by a door.
I see.
Well,
So,
yes,
so these are like some of the differences, obviously. And
yes,
just to save some time, I wanted you to talk actually about your experience studying architecture here. And
okay,
from talking with you, you told me how you had to walk out of a classroom because you didn't agree
okay,
with what the professor said about African architecture. Do you mind
okay,
sharing that story
okay.
briefly?
Not at all, not at all. I was in third year of architecture school here in Georgia, and I had just started, my own personal research into what African design might be. So the project for that semester was to do a museum, a children's museum. So typically what you do is you go and you do your research and you come up with a context to where you will pull elements of your context and reflect it in your design. Excuse me. And what I did was I did some research on Ghanaian and Egyptian architecture and some artifacts as relates to wisdom, because a museum houses wisdom. So I found some different shapes and meanings to the headrest for the Egyptian princess, and for the Ghanaian kings that would sit on a certain design stool, and all of the wisdom attached to those objects I incorporated into the design of my building. And on jury day, which is where you present your project to a classroom of your peers and professors, I explained my design, and to my amazement, to my horror actually, I was told that, well, Africans really don't have architecture. So it's not appropriate for you to try and reference that in your design. Africans pretty much design huts with thatch roof, and that's not considered
So how
architecture.
did you react to that?
I was horrified. I was horrified. I really felt bad because architecture is an area where it's creative, and if I'm going to be admitted into a school of design, because you want me to be creative and form these buildings, then it means that you believe I have the ability to create. So as a black woman, as an African, as a Nigerian, you're telling me that my people have not created design. So then what do you want me to do? Copy the other kids in the class who are from other places, non-African kids? It was very hurtful. So unfortunately, at that time, like I told you, I was, young and,
So you left the
and on
class
fire. I
basically.
packed my project and my books and I left, and I never went back.
Wow, you left the
Yeah.
school completely and you went and studied urban planning at another
That's
school, right?
that's correct.
But talking about what you're just saying, if you take a look at some of the textbooks that we still use today in many African countries, they're from European countries or America or something like that. It's getting more and more difficult for an African architect, so to say, to come up with what architecture used to be in those days in Africa. Even if you take a look at Egypt, the pyramids and stuff like that, there's no way you can deny that Africans have their own architecture. So what do you
Right.
have to say to what we're being taught in school now? Because I don't know if you can completely blame some of the students because now we're being taught. So I guess my question is, what do you have to say to the colonial influence, on
Right,
African
right.
architecture?
Right, right. That's a very heavy question and very, very long response, but I will, try and cut it down. But it's very layered. Yes, when British left Nigeria in the 1960s and they left our schools, a lot of our textbooks that we're using then we're still using now. So that is, we're learning design from a British perspective.
I see.
Okay, still in the schools today. And then it doesn't help now that, what is West is best. So when a young architect comes out of school, even if he wants to try and reflect some African designs and aesthetics and motifs and concepts from
There's no
Africa,
record.
there's no record and it will not be appreciated because unfortunately the who's who, the elites, those that have money, typically when they want a building design, they're going to hire you and tell you, I want what they have on Fifth Avenue
Yeah,
in Buckhead, Atlanta. I want,
yeah.
pure American
Atlantic
privilege.
City.
It shows that I've arrived. I'm not that proud of my culture when it comes to architecture. I'll wear the gele, I'll wear the agbada, the all that, and look royal and regal. But in my architecture, I still don't know how you can make it African and make it look like what I'll be proud of. So they shun anyone who's really bringing authentic, innovative African influence into the architecture.
Wow.
So basically we have to be proud of that part of our heritage,
Okay.
like we are in the music and in the arts, and all in our fashion. Let us translate it to our architecture as well.
And some of this things actually have a lot of advantages. Just talking with you, mud houses actually have a lot of advantages. Like it gets cool in the summertime when you're inside a
Right,
mud
right,
house. It gets
right,
warm when it's cold outside, things like that.
right,
So, but
right.
but but then you were telling me now we have to rely on using cement and bricks, and we have to be shipping cement from where?
Yes, yes. In the beginning, back in the beginning, when the British got to Nigeria, we were doing great things with advanced mud at that time. in some areas in Yoruba land, there were 3-story mud buildings.
Wow.
Okay, yes, yes. We had gone far in our own styles, but they came and said, okay, no, this is not, this is ancient. Start bulldozing all of our communities, saying that now we must use imported cement from England, use their floor plans. This is when we started building GRAs in all the areas in Nigeria.
I see.
And yeah, so they discouraged us from modernizing what we were doing. And so to use their own buildings, plans, and materials, you're in Africa and you're using cement and iron corrugated roof. So why wouldn't you walk in there and walk into an oven? But if you're going to use modernized mud blocks, bricks, that breathes, it keeps the heat out in the day, and by the time when it gets cool in the night, the heat has finally come in. So it's, if we would modernize our own materials according also to our pocketbook, what can we afford? And according to the availability, what would we do with our available materials? What designs would we come up? What would the aesthetics be? What colors, patterns, textures, the feel, the layouts of the space, interior courtyards, all those wonderful, warm, organic living environments that we used to live in and could live in now, a modernized way. What would that look like? It's for us to do that.
And talking about living in those kinds of houses in the modern time, you're actually working on a project developing affordable housing in Africa, but starting from Nigeria. Do you mind talking briefly about that as we round up?
Okay, well, what I'm doing now, I'm trying to work with actually students here, minority students here in the US and students in architecture and planning in Nigeria, to come together and begin working on prototypes of affordable housing and just regular housing, but affordable housing for Nigeria. Start brainstorming on prototypes and coming up with this new design language and ideology that we can begin to mass produce.
And that is African, so to say.
Exactly.
Right? And my last question is just for you to challenge an African architect out there, or just, any African student here in the US, because a lot of time we just sit back, we don't challenge so many things that we are being taught that that is not completely true, because if you hadn't stood up for what you believe in, maybe you would just change your design, but today you are doing what you wanted to do, which is African design. So can you talk briefly to maybe African students here or an African architect that is now completely out of track when it comes to doing things in our own culture?
Right. Okay, the first thing I'll say is just to dig within, connect to that prideful heritage that we do have, and then do what I did. Go out and do your own research. Find out what is it, what is African design, and then try to begin incorporating it in what you do. If you don't find clients, no problem. Take it to the next step. If you cannot design for somebody, then why don't you design and build it, and then showcase it and see how fast the people will line up, because what you have designed and built for them is incredible. It will fit. It will satisfy the needs that they didn't even know that they had, because nobody had ever presented it to them. So stand up, take it to the next level, design it, build it, and showcase it, and see. You will get that respect and you will get a lot of business.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I like the way you put it. So viewers, if you didn't hear anything today from Nmadili, at least hear that last word, stand up, and take it to the next level. And eventually you will get a lot of customers that would come your way. Nmadili, thank you so much for coming on Sahara TV.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Nice talking with you.
All right.
Thank you very much. So, all right, viewers, that has been Nmadili Okwumabua, and she's an urban planner as well as an architect, and she had challenged the status quo here in the US to stand up for what she believes in, which is African architecture. And today she's an advocate for African architecture. I'm sure you've enjoyed our time with her. Stay tuned, we have more to come.